I tricked my cheating wife into thinking I was cheating on her, then disappeared like a thermonuclear ninja ghost and handed her divorce papers on Christmas. I hope you have some time because this is going to be a long story. The events I'm about to share cover the period from the end of 2019. As the rules require, all names have been changed. So, here's the backstory. My wife has been my love since school. We started dating in 1992 when we were both 17. Now we are both 45 and have been together ever since. She is the only woman I have ever had a relationship with. We got married 5 years later, when we were 22, right after graduating from college. A year later, we had the first of 2 sons. I gave her 23 years of my life, built us a house, and worked like hell to give her the life she dreamed of. Of course, we had difficult periods, but what couple doesn't? Even in the hardest times, we found ways to cope with problems and only became stronger. That's why the news of her betrayal shocked me so much. In March 2020, I felt for the first time that something was wrong in our relationship. 2 months before that, we were already at some kind of impasse. I was recovering from knee surgery. I tore my anterior cruciate ligament in the fall of 2019 and still couldn't move normally. At that time, I had only about 55% mobility in my knee. It had a big impact on many things around the house. I was on injury benefits because I got hurt at work and couldn't do my normal chores. My sons helped as much as they could, but some things only I could do had to be put off or shifted to my wife, and she wasn't thrilled about that. Our close life also almost completely stopped. It had already slowed down before my injury, and now it stopped altogether. During this time, she, let's call her Sue, started spending more time with colleagues after work. From November 2019 to March 2020, this became a routine for her. Naturally, I didn't think much of it. In 23 years of our relationship, I had no reason to doubt or mistrust her. She had her own friends, I had mine, plus our shared social circle. I often met with my friends, and it was never an issue. But around January 2020, I noticed something strange. Sue began to noticeably distance herself from me. Yes, we had difficulties, but she had never refused affection before. The usual hugs and kisses she used to give me stopped. Her phone was always in her hands. I hadn't been suspicious before. She would often show me interesting things from the internet, craft ideas, recipes from Pinterest, memes, whatever. But now, she became more secretive with her phone. Her communication with me became abrupt, as if I irritated her. Then March 2020 came. The pandemic started, and New York went into quarantine. Our professions were considered essential, so we didn't work from home. I had just gotten permission to return to work after 5 months of recovery. I couldn't wait to get back. Being on sick leave for 5 months, recovering from knee surgery, and not being able to exercise was driving me crazy. I love physical activity. I'm into martial arts and usually go to the gym 4 times a week, not counting housework. About a week or 2 into the lockdown, Sue told me she'd have to stay late at work. Again, I didn't think much of it because of the nature of her job. I assumed it would happen every other day, but no, she stayed late every day. And not just for an hour or 2. She came home 3 or more hours later, went straight to the shower, spent a little time with me and our 17-year-old son, and then went to bed. Our eldest, who is 22, lives with his girlfriend in another area. As my knee improved, we started making love again. But, as you probably guessed, she wasn't emotionally or mentally involved. I noticed it pretty quickly. By early April, the situation became clear. All the signs pointed to an affair. That's when I decided I needed answers. I started digging online for signs of betrayal. Naturally, her behavior matched almost all of them. I expanded my search, looking for ways to find proof. I started with her social media. Looking through her Facebook posts from the previous months, everything seemed normal. Photos of us with our sons, pictures with friends, and some shots from her evening outings with colleagues. These photos included her close friends from work and some people I'd never met. But I noticed one thing. In many of the photos, the same guy appeared. Whenever he was in the picture, he stood too close to my wife, his hand on her shoulder or lower back. Too close for someone I'd never met in person. I didn't like it, but that wasn't the worst part. It turned out this guy was her friend on Facebook and followed her on Instagram. I decided to check out his Facebook page. Guess what I found? He blocked me. Why the hell would a stranger block me from viewing his page, but stay friends with my wife on Facebook? Yeah, by that time, I had already started playing detective, like Batman. I wasn't in denial anymore. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy. My task now was to find out how long this had been going on. Throughout April and May, that's exactly what I did. I can't even explain how much information I managed to dig up. Before I started my search, we had a family plan for our mobile phones, which meant I had access to a lot of data. My future ex-wife's call history was revealing. The two most frequently dialed numbers between October 2019 and April 2020 were mine, and a number I'd never seen before. Guess whose number it was? A quick Google search confirmed that it was the same guy from the photos. The same one who blocked me on Facebook. Let's just call him Scumbag, because that's what he is. Now the picture was becoming clearer. But most of their messages were suspiciously vague. She was deleting a lot of them. I knew she was cheating on me, but I didn't have any direct proof. I needed more. At that point, I told my best friend, Ozzy, about what I'd found. He asked if I had confronted her with the evidence. I said no because I didn't feel like it was enough. That's when he told me about an app one could install to monitor her communication in real time. I installed it, synced it with our mobile plan, and waited. Finally, after several days, I saw the proof. Messages between them talking about how much fun they had the night before and how they couldn't wait to do it again over the weekend. Boom. A punch to the gut. To say I was stunned is an understatement. I think that moment was a turning point. For the next 2 days, I was just broken. I consciously distanced myself from her, and she clearly noticed. She tried to console me, asking what was wrong, but I brushed her off. I couldn't even look at her. This was the woman I gave 23 years of my life to. I gave her everything I could and more. And she cheated on me with a guy barely 5 years older than our oldest son. By the 3rd day, I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. I called Ozzy and told him my suspicions were confirmed. He asked if I had talked to her. I hadn't. But I told him I wasn't just going to divorce her. I wanted revenge. I wanted to destroy her life. Completely. It would take time. But I had a plan. While Googling about cheating, I came across a quote that stuck with me. The enemy of cheating is unpredictability. That became the foundation of my plan. I was going to make her life hell while secretly preparing my exit strategy. By early June, I still had the app installed. Almost every night, I collected as much data as I could from their conversations. They acted like they were in a full-fledged romance, dirty talks, exchanging explicit photos, romantic messages, the whole deal. By then, I stopped actually reading any of it. I just copied the information and archived it on my private server. At the same time, I started acting strangely. I left the house at odd hours and came back even later than she did. Whenever she asked what I was doing, I'd just shrug and say, "Stuff to do," then put my phone away. I also changed the passwords to all my accounts so she couldn't access anything. For context, in all our years of marriage, we never hid anything from each other. But around the time her affair began, she had changed the passwords to her Facebook and phone, claiming it was due to security issues. Yeah, great cover. Anyway, I told Ozzy about my plan. I also confided in my older sister and 2 of my closest friends. These were people I trusted with my life, and I made them swear to keep it secret. For context, Ozzy and I had been friends since childhood. Our other friends, Joey and Nina, had known us since high school. Pay attention to Nina. She's important later. By July, Sue was in full-blown paranoia. She started texting and calling me a lot more, asking where I was and what I was doing. I noticed the seed of doubt I planted a month earlier was starting to grow. It became especially obvious in her messages to Scumbag. She told him she was confused and admitted that I had become distant and cold. The nerve. In one of their conversations, she suggested they stop meeting at our house, because she had no idea when I might show up. Oh yeah, she brought that idiot to our house. Thanks for that. In one message, Scumbag even asked if she was worried that I might be cheating on her. Of course, it made me angry, but I can't describe how much joy and laughter that dialogue brought me. My wife, who was cheating on me, arguing with her lover about whether it made her angry that her husband might be cheating on her. Ironic. Huh? By the way, I wasn't cheating on her. When I left home, I was usually at Ozzy's or Joey's place. We'd drink, watch fights, or I'd hang out at my sister's with her husband. He's like an older brother to me. My sister is 52, and her husband is 58. She told him about Sue's betrayal but didn't mention my plan. I couldn't risk it. He's a talker. Now, let's move on to October. That's when things took a serious turn. I'd been in my fake romance for 3 months by that point, and Sue could feel the distance growing between us. From the day I started the plan until the day she confronted me, October 20th, 2020, I didn't touch her once. No hugs, no kisses, no closeness. Nothing. But she didn't really need it. She still has this closeness with Scumbag, only now at his place or motels. That day, she called me at work and asked me to come home right after my shift. She said she needed to have an important conversation. I won't lie, I half believed she was going to confess. But of course, that didn't happen. Instead, I got home and she asked me if I was unhappy with her. The audacity. She pointed out that I was spending too much time away from home, that I wasn't showing her affection, and that our bed life had disappeared. She said she was worried that I was pushing her away because of how she treated me when I was recovering from my knee surgery. Then she hit me with the funniest line I'd ever heard. She straight up asked if I was cheating on her. Guys, I fell to the floor and started laughing hysterically. And when I say hysterically, I mean like Joker-level laughing. To her, it looked like I was laughing at the absurdity of the accusation. But really, I was laughing at the irony. I rolled on the floor, tears streaming down my face, for about 5 minutes before I could calm down enough to respond. I sat down, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head, and said nothing. Then I stood up, dusted myself off, kissed the top of her head, and went about my business. Later that night, while I was in my office, I thought, why not see what she's telling Scumbag? I opened the app. Sure enough, they were texting. She told him, I know he's cheating on me. I asked him today, and he just laughed in my face. He fell to the floor and rolled around for about 5 minutes. He doesn't care about my feelings anymore. I don't know why, but he's leaving me. I know it's karma. I deserve it. I swear. The smile that crept across my face probably looked like the Cheshire Cat's. She was breaking down. Scumbag tried to comfort her, saying if I truly loved her, she wouldn't have had to turn to him for what I couldn't give her. But the tone of her replies made it clear. She was doubting everything. The same woman who cheated because I couldn't perform my duties during recovery now feared losing me to another woman. What a joke. During this time, I was busy with the second part of my plan. By September, I had met with a family lawyer to start the divorce process. I had a mountain of evidence by then. In New York, divorces are either by fault or by consent. With the amount of proof I had, I could pin her to the wall in court. My lawyer advised me to organize my financial affairs in anticipation of the property division. But I took it further. I quietly withdrew all the money from our joint account and transferred it to my personal account. I also started looking for apartments. By November, I hadn't changed my behavior. I escalated it. And that's where my friend Nina comes in. For context, Sue and Nina were never close. I met Nina in my first year of school, 2 years before I met Sue. Even back then, Sue saw Nina as a threat. Nina was my closest friend, and Sue always had this subtle distrust of her. She never said it directly, but I could feel it. It was obvious to anyone who knew us. Nina was never a big fan of Sue. In the early stages of my relationship with Sue, Nina pointed out that Sue forced herself into our friend group. Meanwhile, I never did the same with her friends. This annoyed Nina. She once said, "Why is Sue doing this? What does she know that we don't?" To this day, Sue still doesn't have any male friends, except for Scumbag. Meanwhile, Nina remains the only woman in our friend group. Nina was stuck abroad because of the pandemic for a while, but finally returned to New York on November 3rd. Ozzy, Joey, and I decided to celebrate her return with dinner and drinks at Joey's house. There were 5 of us: Ozzy, Joey, his wife, who is also Nina's sister, Nina, and me. Being the sly fox that she is, Nina came up with a diabolical plan to piss Sue off. She suggested we take some photos, in the exact same style as the ones I found of Sue with Scumbag, and post them on my Facebook page. And that's exactly what we did. On November 5th, Sue found out about it. I think some of our mutual friends saw the posts and noticed how close I was to Nina in the photos. This completely confused Sue. She was still convinced I was cheating on her, and I'm pretty sure she wanted to blame Nina. But she knew Nina had spent most of the year in Europe. That didn't stop her from trying to lecture me. That evening, she confronted me about being too touchy with Nina in the photos. I saw a perfect opportunity to strike first. I said, "What about those photos of you and Scumbag last year? He was pretty touchy too." But I didn't lose my temper over it. She was shocked. It was the first time I mentioned his name. I could see the gears turning in her head as she tried to think of an excuse. Until that moment, she had no idea I'd seen those photos. I rarely use Facebook, so when I actually post something, it's an event. That's why the photos with Nina caused such a stir in our circle. Sue finally responded, "Oh, he's just like that, really friendly. I know how it looks, but there's nothing between us. I'm sorry if the photos upset you. I'll delete them." I said, "No, it's not about the photos. It's about the fact that you've been close with this guy for a year while lying to me about working late or meeting friends. That's what offended me." That night, Sue became ridiculously affectionate and clingy. She was all over me, constantly trying to show affection, initiate intimacy, and act like the perfect wife. But I ignored her at every turn. Meanwhile, I kept archiving every message she sent to Scumbag. By this point, I had long stopped feeling anything. Any desire I might have had to save our marriage was gone. I quit the game the day I launched the first phase of my plan. Later, Sue messaged Scumbag, "Everything's gotten worse. I don't know what to do. I feel like he hates me." She was right. And then, the turning point. She told Scumbag that she couldn't see him anymore. She said she was overwhelmed with guilt, that karma was strangling her, and she couldn't risk losing me. Sue told him she loved him deeply, but she was still in love with me and needed to save her marriage. "Oh, honey, you're about 8 months too late." Scumbag lost it. He started showering her with sweet talk, things like, "He doesn't love you the way I do. You're making a mistake. You can't throw away what we have." But by November and December, Sue was stuck in limbo. She spent most of her time trying to figure out what was going on in my head. She still couldn't tell if I was cheating. Meanwhile, Scumbag kept bombarding her with messages, but she didn't reply to any of them. I often noticed how Sue would check her phone, then quickly put it away. Meanwhile, the second phase of my plan was complete. The divorce papers were ready. I found a studio apartment in the Bronx and signed a 2-year lease. All of my money was safely in my personal account. I was ready to strike the decisive blow. And then Thanksgiving came. My eldest son and his girlfriend decided to host a small dinner for close family. Present that night were the girl's parents. She's an only child, me, Sue, and our youngest son. It was a great evening. My son's girlfriend is studying to be a chef, and she cooked everything herself, and damn, can she cook. Since I needed to maintain the appearance that everything was fine between Sue and me, I played the role of the loving husband. I kissed her on the cheek a few times, hugged her from behind, and showed small gestures of affection. Sue loved it. Keep in mind, this was the first time I touched her since that night in October when she confronted me about Nina. Almost 2 months had passed. I won't lie, I was disgusted doing it, but it had to be done. I couldn't risk drawing attention to myself. If I was cold or distant, our sons, my sister, or my son's girlfriend's parents would start asking questions. That night, our younger son decided to stay at his brother's place. I drove Sue home. On the way, she thanked me for being so good to her. She said, "I don't know what's going on with you, darling, but I'm here." I had to stop myself from laughing. I just replied, "I know. I just need time." That night, for the first time since spring, we had closeness. I thought, why not have one last round of fun before I erase her from my life? I won't go into details, but let's just say it wasn't lovemaking. When I finished, she just lay there, stunned. No hugs, no pillow talk. I got up, took a shower, and went to sleep in the office. The best part? I used a protection for the first time in 20 years. It confused her, but she didn't ask any questions. And I wasn't about to risk unprotected closeness with her, knowing she'd been close with Scumbag for months. The next morning, I woke up and checked the spy app for the first time in weeks. Sure enough, She had texted Scumbag. The guy had completely fallen for her. He poured his heart out, telling her, "You're wasting your time trying to rekindle things with him. You've been in a cage for 23 years. You deserve the love of a man who will cherish you. Let me remind you, this guy is only 5 years older than our son. She destroyed our marriage and our home for a guy who wasn't even halfway to 50. Her response? "I love you, and I've loved every moment with you, but I can't lose him. He's still the love of my life. There will always be a place for you in my heart, but our physical relationship is over. I hope we can stay friends." Scumbag begged her to meet one last time. And, as you probably guessed, she agreed. One more time. Who am I to judge? After all, I did the same thing the night before. I archived all of their texts. Every word. On December 4th, I began the final phase of my plan. The divorce papers were in my hands. My new place was ready. Now, I just needed to start moving my things out. But first, I had to tell my sons. That Friday evening, I called my eldest home. I invited both of them into my office and told them everything. I didn't go into detail, but I told them their mother had been cheating on me for over a year, and that I would be filing for divorce soon. My youngest son took it the hardest. He had just been cheated on by his first girlfriend, 4 months earlier. Watching his heart break again because of his own mother, it crushed me. The older one took it much more calmly. He offered to let his brother stay with him until everything settled down. I agreed immediately. We packed some of my younger son's things, and before leaving, he asked me, "Are you going to be okay, Dad?" I smiled and said, "Yes, son. I'll be fine. And so will you. We're going to be okay, I promise." And just like that, they were gone. The hardest part was over. Now, it was time to drop the nuke. I was already at work, moving essentials little by little. I left my eldest son a spare key to grab anything else he needed later. Things Sue wouldn't notice were missing right away. I bought a new phone and number. Only the people who needed to know. Ozzy, Joey, Nina, my sons, sister, and mom got my new contact info. Meanwhile, Sue was still in the dark. She stayed in touch with Scumbag, though not as frequently. There was still an emotional connection between them. I kept collecting information. Every single detail. Texts, calls, photos, emails. I saved everything. I started printing it all out. I probably spent over $1,500 on office supplies, printer cartridges, paper, folders, you name it. Everything was meticulously cataloged, organized from the beginning of their affair to their last conversation on December 16th. It filled 14 folders. I wrapped them like Christmas presents, labeled them, and addressed them to various people. Sue's mom and dad, her 2 sisters and brother. Her HR department, Scumbag, worked at the same company, and their office had strict no-fraternization policies. Several of her closest friends, Scumbag himself, and his parents. On December 16th, I brought the boxes to the post office and shipped them all out. Expected delivery? December 22nd to 24th. Perfect timing. The Christmas bomb was set. Sue came home at the usual time, none the wiser. I stopped monitoring her texts on the 18th. I had everything I needed. That night, she showered, spent a little time with me, and we fooled around on the couch. I know, I'm a bastard, but I was enjoying myself. She went to bed, clueless. The final phase was here. In the middle of the night, I woke up, grabbed one of the last 3 folders, and wrapped it. I taped the divorce papers inside the cover and left it on my side of the bed. On top, I left a note that read, "Merry Christmas." Next to it, I placed my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed the essentials, 2 backpacks, and walked out of the house I'd lived in for 23 years. This all happened a week ago. For Sue, I've completely disappeared. I blocked her on Facebook, but for some reason, she hasn't blocked me yet. I've been watching the fallout in real time. The packages were delivered to everyone I sent them to. Sue is getting roasted. Her younger sister laid into her. Her parents weren't thrilled either. My mom? She destroyed her. I always knew my mom could be tough, but the things she said to Sue were downright vicious. Sue's been desperately trying to find me, but the people who know where I am aren't saying a word. Her Facebook is filled with attempts to reach me. I know she probably suspects I'm watching, and she's right. But I won't speak to her without my lawyer present. The only time I'll see her again will be in a courtroom. She has no way to flip the situation and make me the bad guy. A mutual friend who works at her company told me that she and Scumbag are being placed on unpaid leave starting tomorrow. So, she's probably kicking off 2021 without a job. As for the last two folders, one went to my lawyer as final evidence for the divorce. The second? I kept it. I plan to burn it in Joey's fire pit once the divorce is finalized. Do I feel guilty about any of this? Not one bit. I was faithful for 23 years. I gave her the house she wanted. I gave her the family she dreamed of. I gave her the life I thought we both deserved. I loved her unconditionally. I never cheated. I never broke my promises. Whenever we had problems, I faced them head-on and talked it out. But instead of coming to me, she found comfort in another man's bed. That's the moment she decided to throw it all away. So no, I don't feel the slightest bit of pity for her. Let her burn in her own personal hell. The worst thing I could lose is the house, the car, and maybe some alimony. But since the divorce was filed due to infidelity, and New York allows at-fault divorces, I doubt I'll owe much, if anything. Christmas was my first full day in the new apartment. The process of settling into my new place is still ongoing. There are things I want to buy, but overall, I've already made it feel like home. I'll be living here for at least 2 years. On Christmas Day, my sons and my eldest girlfriend came over and spent most of the day with me. She brought homemade sweets and cooked an incredible dinner. It gave me a chance to really talk with my sons, something I hadn't done in a long time. It felt good. Later, my older sister showed up with more treats and spent time with us. It was the first time she had seen her nephews in almost a year. Having everyone around helped me cope with the emotions. If I'd been alone, I probably would have just drunk myself unconscious. Everyone left around 8 p.m., and I decided to visit Joey and his wife, Claudia. I spent a couple of hours with them, had a few drinks, and headed home. Then, something important happened on December 29th, 2020. Around midday, I got a message from Nina. She asked if I was free that evening. Of course, I was. We agreed to meet after work. She arrived, and we went to a diner near my office in New York. Restaurants were still operating at 25% capacity due to the pandemic, but finding a spot wasn't hard. Most people preferred to stay home. As soon as we sat down and ordered, Nina laid all her cards on the table. I already knew this moment was coming. She confessed that she had liked me since we were teenagers, but never had the chance to say it. Sue had taken me away before Nina could ever confess. For context, I've known Nina for 2 years longer than Sue. As I mentioned, she was the fourth link in our group: me, Ozzy, Joey, and Nina. Back in school, we were the outsiders, the misfits who didn't fit in anywhere. At the time, Nina struggled with weight issues and was diabetic. She was overweight, a goth girl, and really cool, but no guy paid attention to her. But there was always chemistry between us. Now, Nina is a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She's the definition of an ugly duckling turned swan. Long story short, we decided that after my divorce is finalized, we'll start dating. And yes, I slept with her that night. We went back to my apartment and had an amazing time. Do I feel guilty about it? Hell no. Nina has been a better friend to me than Sue ever was in the 23 years I've known her. She's always had my back. I found out that night that Nina had even stepped aside on purpose when Sue and I started dating, just to let me build a life with her. That kind of self-sacrifice really hit me. It felt like true love. Now, I know it might sound like I'm justifying sleeping with her, but to me, it felt right. I plan to give this relationship with Nina everything I've got and see where it takes us. Now, about yesterday, the day I met Sue and her lawyer to discuss the divorce. It's been 2 weeks since I disappeared from Sue's life. On Monday, I got a call from my lawyer. Sue's attorney scheduled a meeting to discuss the terms of the divorce for January 6th, yesterday. On Tuesday, I met with my lawyer to go over what I wanted. A divorce due to adultery. Full division of property. I would sell Sue my share of the house. She could keep it. We would keep our cars. I would retain my cabin in Pennsylvania. No alimony for Sue, due to adultery. As for our youngest son, he could choose who to live with. Most likely, it would be me. So, Wednesday arrived. I walked into my lawyer's office dressed head to toe in black, full Johnny Cash mode. Sue was already there. She looked terrible. She could barely hold herself together. I kept a stone face. I won't bore you with the legal back and forth. Her lawyer proposed reconciliation terms. I rejected them almost immediately. Once she finished reading the details, we agreed on a legal separation of residence leading to a mutual consent divorce. The only concession I made was paying her $653 a month in temporary support for utilities until she finds a job. To be honest, that's a small price to pay. She's already lost so much. The trust of her family, the respect of our sons, and her career. And now, she's losing me. Sue was fired for having an affair with scumbag. The divorce will be finalized in about 3 months. I earn enough that paying temporary support won't hurt me financially, even if she delays finding a new job. She also has enough savings to live for at least a year after the divorce. After that, she'll be on her own. That's a small price to pay to finally rid myself of her and the betrayal. If everything goes according to plan, I'll be free by April. After the meeting, my lawyer gave me final instructions and told me he'd keep me updated on the progress of the filing. As I walked out onto the street, Sue caught up with me. She asked to talk. I decided to give her the chance. She had behaved well during the meeting, but the moment we stepped outside, the tears started flowing. She told me how sorry she was, how she never meant for any of this to happen. Sue said she never expected to fall in love with scumbag, but the moment she thought I was cheating, she realized how wrong she was to betray me. She asked if I could ever forgive her. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Can we start over someday? Maybe in a few years? I can't imagine my life without you. I told her, you should start imagining it, because this is the last time I'll ever talk to you or see you. I reminded her that our youngest son was old enough to make his own decisions. I told her, I gave you half of my life and every drop of love I had. And you, by your own words, fell in love with another man. You've got no chance at forgiveness. I told her that any love I had for her faded months ago. The moment she confessed her love to scumbag instead of coming to me and admitting we had problems. I looked her in the eyes and said, I loved the woman you used to be, but I hate the person standing in front of me now. We were standing there, on the sidewalk in Manhattan, with Sue sobbing uncontrollably. People passing by stared, but I didn't care. I wasn't trying to humiliate her publicly. I'd already destroyed her social and professional life. But I needed to say what had been boiling inside me for months. I put in my headphones, turned around, and walked away. That night, her father called me. He apologized. He praised me for always being a good husband and said he was ashamed of her. He told me, I raised her better than this. I won't lie. I'll miss the old man. My own father passed away years ago, and my father-in-law became a father figure to me. But I don't see the point in maintaining ties with anyone from her family. After that call, I went on Facebook and changed my status to divorced. I know, it's not legally finalized yet, but to me, it's already over. Since I rarely post anything, it caught a lot of attention. People began flooding my inbox with questions and messages. I told them the truth. I filed for divorce from Sue. Of course, Nina saw it right away. She called me, surprised at how quickly I took that step. She didn't realize how far along I was in the process when we spoke before. I asked her to come over. She agreed immediately. We was close again in the bed. But this time, she stayed the night. We lay in bed, talking until morning. I haven't felt that kind of connection in a long time. Nina understands me in ways Sue never did. I can't get enough of her. Since the moment she confessed her feelings, she's all I think about. I know some people might say I'm moving too fast. But for me, my marriage ended the day Sue chose to betray me. I've been ready to move on for a long time. And now, I am. The divorce is in progress. I'm starting a new chapter with Nina. I know I once said I'd never get married again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings. And I can't deny that I feel the same way. We're taking it slow. But for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. Nina and I agreed not to announce our relationship until the divorce is finalized and legally binding. As for Sue, I don't care what happens to her. Let scumbag move into our old house. Let him sleep in our bed. It doesn't matter to me. I'll receive my share of the house's value in 4 quarterly payments throughout 2021. After that, I won't ever have to see her again. To everyone who has supported, encouraged, and praised me, I'm eternally grateful. My wife almost died yesterday. Here's what happened. Since only my close friends, sons, sister, and mom have my new contact information, and since I blocked Sue on everything, she hasn't been able to contact me since I disappeared on Christmas Eve. But some of our mutual friends can still reach me. Last night, I was in my apartment when I got a message from one of them. One of the few who didn't turn away from Sue after I exposed the affair. When I replied, my friend said he had gone to check on Sue and found her unconscious in her bedroom. She had foam at the mouth and 2 empty pill bottles beside her. Sue was rushed to the hospital and placed in intensive care, critical, but stable. The doctors believe she will most likely survive. But they made it clear, even if she does, she won't be okay. This friend begged me to come to the hospital. Sue's parents and sisters were already there. Apparently, the hospital tried to contact me since I'm still listed as Sue's emergency contact, but my old number is disconnected. I simply said, no, Sue is not my problem anymore. If she decided to take the easy way out rather than face the shame and pain of ruining our 23-year marriage, that's on her. I told my sons what happened. I also made it clear, if you want to support your mother, I won't judge you. She's still your mom. But I'm done. They were surprised by my response, but they accepted it. Now that word has spread, many of the friends who abandoned her are suddenly feeling sorry for her. They're telling me I should be by her side, that I should support her despite what she did. Apparently, her lover, scumbag, tried to visit her, but the hospital wouldn't let him in since he's not family. Now, those same people are pressuring me to visit. But I don't feel anything for this woman anymore. I lost those feelings a long time ago. Her betrayal killed them. Frankly, the fact that she chose this selfish way out only makes me hate her more. This is the same woman who cheated on me for almost a year with someone barely older than our son. Someone she thought was worth destroying 23 years of marriage. And now, when she faces the consequences of her actions, she tries to escape. Even if she survives, people will immediately forgive her. The same ones who condemned her for cheating will pity her. And I'll be painted as the bitter ex who refused to care. The only person who stood by me was her father. He called and told me he respected my decision to stay away. I felt like, maybe I never really knew this woman. I understand that my sudden disappearance could have triggered a mental breakdown. But now I'm left wondering, did she do this because she was truly overwhelmed? Or was this a deliberate, risky move to gain sympathy and rebuild the relationship she destroyed? She cheated, but now, she's a victim. I'm sorry if this sounds like rambling nonsense. I'm still trying to process everything. I just want to make this clear to everyone. I'm done. I won't visit her. Sue lost the right to my care the day she let some scumbag sleep with her. I know many will judge me for this, but I don't care. Think whatever you want. But if you were in my position, you'd see her actions differently. Some of you might think this is my fault, that I tormented her for months, making her believe I was cheating while she was actively betraying me. Maybe I ruined her life and became the catalyst for her breakdown. Maybe she's just a heartless sociopath. But I gave this woman half my life. I did everything I could to be the best husband I could be. And by her own words, I had nothing to do with her decision to cheat. She did it for herself. Her selfishness knows no bounds. And I'm glad I'm rid of her. If that makes me a bad person for refusing to visit her in the hospital, so be it. I'm sticking to my beliefs. She chose betrayal. She chose her desires over our marriage. Now it's my turn to choose myself. Let her rot. I don't care. Let someone else help her pick up the pieces. My obligation to care for her ended the day we signed the separation agreement. I just needed to vent. If you're going to judge me for how I feel, keep your opinions to yourself. After 23 years and 2 kids, I realized I never truly knew this woman. I have no sympathy for her, and I never will. Let her rot. Her father informed me Sue was moved from the ICU to the psychiatric ward. Doctors are still monitoring her mental state. She's conscious and coherent again, but weak. Her father told me she asked if I had visited. When he said no, she became quiet and withdrawn. He respectfully told me he'd only share updates if I asked. I appreciated that. I also scheduled a psychologist for my 17-year-old son. His first session is on Monday. On April 13th, Sue officially became my ex-wife. Initially, my lawyer said the divorce would be finalized by the 18th. But since New York was easing restrictions due to the pandemic, the process wrapped up a few days early. On April 12th, Jeff, my lawyer, called and asked me to come by his office. When I arrived, he handed me the official notice of finalized divorce. He shook my hand. I couldn't just leave. I hugged him and thanked him for everything he did for me. On the way home, I mentally replayed 24 years of memories, our relationship, our family, everything. When I stepped into my apartment, it finally hit me. I collapsed to the floor, and all the emotions I had been bottling up poured out. I hadn't cried like that in years, but they weren't tears of sadness. My soul felt free, like I'd been locked in a dark abyss, and someone had finally opened the door. That evening, I called my eldest son. I told him the divorce was finalized, that his mom and I were no longer married. He asked how I felt. I think he could tell I'd been crying. I told him I was fine. Then my 17-year-old son grabbed the phone, and we talked for nearly an hour and a half. His brother and his fiancée are taking good care of him. He's continuing therapy, and while I won't share details, he's still working through a lot, especially regarding how he views relationships. Later that night, Nina came over. I told her the news. She hugged me tightly, wrapped her arms around my waist, and just held me while I cried again. When I calmed down, she whispered, "I'll never betray you. I love you. With all my heart." I know she means it. Maybe some will judge me for moving on so quickly, but I don't regret the life I built. Despite everything Sue did, she gave me 2 wonderful sons. But now, it's clear, I chose the wrong woman. Nina has given me so much in the past 4 months, and she's asked for nothing in return. All she wants is for me to be with her. She's my hero. After the divorce, some interesting things happened. For example, Scumbag reached out to me. Apparently, he saw my story when it gained traction online and immediately recognized himself. The first thing he did was apologize. He told me what happened after his mom received the folder I sent her. Turns out, his mom is a devout Catholic, the type who goes to church 3 times a week. When she found out her son had destroyed a 23-year marriage, she lost it. That same day, she kicked him out. He also received the folder I sent to his workplace. He was fired. Since then, he's been crashing on friends' couches, trying to find a new job. I could have completely destroyed him, but I didn't. I asked him when he last saw Sue. He told me he hadn't seen her in months. The last time they spoke, Sue told him to forget about her and move on. At least she wasn't lying about that. She had told me the same thing the last time we spoke. I asked him a few more questions. Surprisingly, the guy was completely honest. I think he was searching for some kind of atonement, trying to take responsibility for the mess he made. Most of what he told me matched the messages and evidence I had gathered. I didn't say much. I just kept asking questions. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes. After he apologized again, I left him with this. "You're a 27-year-old guy whose own mother hates him for ruining a marriage that lasted almost as long as you've been alive. I know you wrote to me because your conscience is eating at you, but I'm not going to comfort you. When I was 27, I was building my future. Now you're homeless and unemployed, a destroyer of families. If you're smart, you'll learn from this. If not, you'll stay a loser until you're my age. If you even make it that far. I'd wish you luck, but you don't need luck. You need to get your life together." And with that, I ended the conversation and blocked him. It wasn't what he expected, but I could have been a lot more hostile. I think those words were enough for him to rethink his life. The next big event? On May 4th, 2021, Nina officially took my last name. For the past 2 months, we had been talking about where we wanted to go with our relationship. Nina made it clear. She didn't want to be with anyone else. She wanted to be my wife. And she wanted me to adopt her daughter. Let's call her Anna. I adore that little girl. She just turned 6 last month, and she idolizes me. I'm the first father figure she's ever known. Her biological father abandoned them when she was 4. Nina never introduced Anna to any of the men she dated after her divorce, unless she saw real potential. With me, she saw it. I have experience raising kids, And my youngest son and Anna are like two peas in a pod. Their bond is both adorable and heartwarming. My youngest has grown very attached to her. I spoke to his therapist about it, and he said it's a good sign. So, last Monday, Nina and I went to City Hall and got married. The next day, we received our marriage certificate. When we told our friends and family, Ozzy just laughed and said, "Who would have doubted it?" My sister joked, "I'm taking bets on when the baby announcement will come." We thought we had kept our relationship a secret. Apparently, everyone already knew. Some might say we got married too soon. And yes, I know I once said I'd never get married again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings. This woman cried in my arms, tears of pure joy, telling me she never thought she'd have a chance to be with me. She told me, in detail, how she had felt for me over the last 25 years, how she regretted letting Sue win. I had no idea how deep her feelings ran. She admitted that while married, she sometimes thought about what could have been, but she refused to wreck my family. Even after everything, Nina gave me so much and asked for so little. Even Sue, the woman I married and had children with, didn't love me the way Nina does. I'd be a fool not to give her my last name. Now she has it. We're starting the paperwork for me to adopt Anna. As for Sue, I haven't spoken to her in 4 months. Mutual friends occasionally update me. One, a realtor, told me she sold the house. He even gave her a job at his office as an administrative assistant. After that, I canceled the temporary support payments. She now lives in a small apartment near his office. He helped her find it. She's become a shadow of her former self. Apparently, she kept to herself and rarely spoke to anyone at work. The last time I heard anything about her was at the end of March. I thanked my friend for keeping me informed, but told him I didn't need updates anymore. Sue is no longer my concern. I'm almost certain she knows about Nina and me, since a few mutual friends have commented on it. My youngest son will be an adult in a year. After that, I have no reason to ever speak to her again. And I won't. That's my story. Thank you all for your support. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but for me, this chapter is closed.